All right, Todd, thank you. April is World Autism Month. In light of Indiana's uncertain fiscal future, disabilities advocates were at the State House to share their concerns. WRTV State House reporter Meredith Hackler shares their concerns and the steps Democrats say the state could take to fully fund Medicaid.
The disabilities community is concerned. With budget cuts looming, they worry that those with disabilities could lose critical services.
You know, he was part of that generation who had to wait for 10 years before he finally got help. And once he got that help, it was an absolute game changer.
Carla Shatino-Poulter is talking about her 24-year-old son, Andy, who's been diagnosed with autism. Without help from Medicaid, she says he never would have gotten a job or been able to live life more independently.
Because of those services he's had, he is able to work. He is able to manage his own money. He arranges his own transportation to and from work. And it's all thanks to those skills that he has learned over time through his waiver services.
Organizations that work with individuals living with autism say early intervention is key to a higher functioning life.
Investing in the front end, while it may seem unpopular, investing on the front end really does save the state of Indiana and Hoosiers a lot of money downstream.
On the fourth floor, lawmakers were in conference committee discussing the state budget. Republicans didn't make themselves available to the press following the meeting, but Democrats did. Democrats from the House and the Senate stressed the importance of fully funding Medicaid programs, and they have some ideas on how to generate more revenue.
Our conference committee report does include a $2 cigarette tax, which we talked about. They said was on the table, which we've been talking about it in our other budget process for the people. That generate $800 million.
Delaying the income tax reduction. So we're just placing a freeze for 2 more years. That would generate about $300 million.
At the State House, Meredith Hackler, WRTV.
Democrats also want to reverse school choice voucher eligibility guidelines to 2021 rates. No word on if Republicans are on board with these proposed changes. However, they have said everything is on the table. Tonight, elected leaders in Fishers could take a final vote on limiting the number of long-term rental properties available in each neighborhood. City leaders are concerned about how many homes are being purchased by out-of-state corporations rather than local families. Some residents say the ordinance could take away homeowners' rights and impact home values. The ordinance is scheduled for a second reading at tonight's City Council meeting, and they could take a final vote on the plan. Still ahead on the news at 5, the legacy left behind by Pope Francis, including his impact on the gay community in the Catholic Church. Plus, what we know about the Trump administration's upcoming move to ban food dyes from the products you buy for your family.
You're watching WRTV, part of the Scripps News Group.
Our coverage continues of Pope Francis and the legacy he leaves behind. Pope Francis met with members of the trans community and apologized to gay people offended by the church. Scripps News Group's Amber Strong takes a deeper look at the LGBTQ community's place inside the Catholic Church under Pope Francis.
Experts say while little change regarding church law, Pope Francis did try to find other ways to create inclusion for LGBTQ people.
But church teaching on LGBT people is a great deal more than just the few lines in the catechism that deal with homosexuality.
Father James Martin has taken his message of prayer and inclusivity just about everywhere.
We need to kick you up to Bishop of the Colbert Nation? What shall it be?
Oh, that's a little grand for a Jesuit. A chaplain's fine.
That includes the halls of the Vatican. In 2022, writing to Pope Francis with a few questions.
I just wanted to give him a time to briefly talk to LGBTQ Catholics.
Francis has extended apologies to the abused and a welcome hand to the historically rejected. And according to Vatican News, met with transgender people near Rome. So Martin's questions weren't so random.
I asked him, what would you most like to know about the church? And he said, read Acts of the Apostles, which was really interesting because there's a church that's kind of mixing it up. And then also, what would you say to an LGBTQ Catholic who felt rejected by the church? And he said very interestingly, to remember that it's not the church that rejects you, the church loves you, but it might be individual people in the church.
This wasn't the first time Martin spoke with the Pope about LGBTQ people or the first time the Pope spoke about their place within the Catholic Church. In 2016, Francis agreed the church should apologize to not only gays, but other marginalized groups like the poor. He also called for parents to accept their LGBTQ children. Francis's gestures were one thing. Changing church doctrine, which teaches that the act of homosexuality is sinful, is another.
What would have to happen, really, in a sense, is for theologians working together along with church officials to come to some newer understanding of how they can accommodate older church teaching on these issues to show that the church evolves rather than dramatically changes. Because the church is not going to say, oh, we were wrong. It's very rare.
Instead, Francis went another direction, one met with both criticism and praise, uplifting LGBTQ Catholics while simultaneously reiterating church doctrine. Acceptance among Catholics varies across countries. For example, Pew Research data shows 65% of U.S. Catholics favor same-sex marriage, compared to only 2% of Catholics in Nigeria. Some theologians argue that Francis's support could have had a trickle-down effect on individual Catholics and parishes. In 2021, a group of Catholic leaders, including a cardinal and an archbishop, signed a statement calling for widespread support of at-risk LGBTQ youth. In 2023, the Vatican changed the rules, allowing transgender people to be baptized under certain circumstances. All the while, Francis continued to condemn the criminal punishment of homosexuality. And in 2023, the Vatican issued a new document allowing priests and bishops to bless same-sex couples while reiterating this was not an endorsement for gay marriage.
To me, there's no such thing as an empty gesture because, yes, many times people want to see more clear-cut evidence of change and of their acceptance, let's say, within the church as LGBT, but it has sometimes is in small steps.
Welcome to Outreach.
In 2021, Martin, a Vatican appointee under Francis, launched Outreach, a website that provides resources to LGBTQ Catholics and leaders, an effort Pope Francis encouraged. Amber Strong, Scripps News.
Something you might have noticed if you drove through Brownsburg today, Main Street is back open to two-way traffic between Green Street and Grant Street. Crews are done with months of utility and infrastructure improvements, but there were still some final inspections out there today. The improvements included a new stormwater system and upgrades to the sanitary sewer system. The town council president told me they also replaced lead water service lines. The work came while INDOT closed Main Street, which is US 136, for resurfacing in the area. Officials say downtown Brownsburg was home to some of the oldest utility lines in town. And the Indianapolis Department of Public Works is taking advantage of today's weather to get some strip patching done. DPW says contractors are out on the west side working on Tibbs Avenue between Washington Street and Michigan Street. A reminder, keep an eye out for those crews and drive carefully when they're nearby. Todd?
And we'll have a nice stretch of weather for all these outdoor crews to continue to work and for you to get outside and enjoy not only sunshine, but happening this week, a nice warming trend heads our way. The pick of the week, I think, is Wednesday. It's completely sunny. The wind should be fairly light and temperatures right around 80 degrees. The wettest day in the forecast, that's going to be Friday, unfortunately, as you start to plan ahead. I think most of the rain, though, probably gets out of here in time for the weekend. So at least that's some good news and a lot of good news before we get to Friday. We started off with some storms this morning. We're still kind of keeping the clouds around, or at least lingering. They've broken apart for some sunshine, though, here this afternoon. We'll lose those clouds once the sun starts to set. 60 degrees is the current temperature. The winds are out of the west. They've been gusting up to about 30 miles per hour, and that's keeping the temperatures just a little bit below normal for this time of year. Mid-50s here from Crawfordsville to Monticello, some 60s as you work your way on the eastern side of the state from Richmond and then down south to Bedford, where it's 66 degrees. As we lose the clouds, we also lose the wind as the sun starts to set. A little breezy here through the early evening hours, and then the wind goes pretty calm throughout the overnight. So that is definitely good news for us. Sunset tonight.